Hello, Year 3. So, how many of you spotted my brother snoring in yesterday's video? I haven't yet received any comments from anybody, so I'm not sure if anybody watched all the way to the end of yesterday's video. But remember, sometimes at the end of the video I leave little secret bloopers so you can see all the funny things that happen at home while I'm filming. So make sure you watch to the end of every single lesson that is uploaded onto this YouTube channel. So today, grammar and reading. We're going to be starting off with some work on Evie in the Jungle, which is going to link to our grammar lesson. And before we can actually carry on with the lesson, we have to do, as usual, our checklist. So up there, you should see 4 different things you need to do. If you haven't done them, pause the video, go and do them, and press play once you have done them because they're going to be very important for today's lesson. Number 1, get a pencil and paper ready. Do you have pencil and paper in front of you? Good. Number 2, make sure you have read to the end of chapter 5 of Evie in the Jungle. That is the chapter we were working on yesterday, so you should already have read it, but if for any reason you're not caught up, make sure you've read to the end of the chapter called The Incredibly Daring Rescue. Number 3, if you haven't watched Monday's video about prefixes, go and watch that. It's a big old introduction, very important for your learning today. And if you were confused about it or you didn't quite understand it, I would recommend you have another watch of that so that your brain is all ready to carry on with your learning today. Lastly, you need to pause this video and write the date and LI, which is underneath me over here. It says 29th of April 2020 in the short date, Year 3 Reading and Grammar, and then the LI is to be able to identify and explain the meanings of the prefixes dis, miss, sub, and in. If this video is still playing, you should have done all of the checklists 1 to 4 and be ready to carry on with the lesson. Okay, so we're going to start with our chapter of Evie in the Jungle, and I have another challenge for you. This is a word spotter challenge. I'm going to read a section of the book, and I want you, as you're watching the screen, which will have the words on it, and as you're listening to me read the story out loud, I would like you to write down on your piece of paper, underneath the LI, any words that you hear or see that contain a prefix. As a little clue, some of the words with prefixes in this passage are ones that you have seen before, and some of them are new ones that we're going to learn today. But you might be able to spot them. If you're thinking carefully and you've looked at the LI, you might even be able to spot the new prefix words. So let's have a look at this passage. It's over there. We're going from this bit. The dolphin bobbed its head underwater, then came back above the surface. Do you have more food? I'll do it for more food. Evie turned and saw that Ernesto had an uneaten fried dumpling in his cabin. We do, and it's yours if you go over and save that sloth's life. She is really scared, and I don't think she'll be able to swim. But you've got to be quick, the fire is spreading. The dolphin disappeared without another thought. Evie was worried. She had no idea if it was going to help or not. But as the seconds became minutes, she thought all hope was lost. So that's this passage of Evie in the Jungle. Let's just recap what's happening in the story at this point. You can see from the picture, there's the sloth that Evie saw, who was scared because, as you can see from the smoke at the top of the picture, a fire is spreading through the forest. And they've persuaded these cheeky little dolphins to help the sloth be rescued. But the only way they could persuade the dolphins was by offering them some food. And here's the boat that Evie is on with her tour. Remember, she's with her dad, and Ernesto is the person who leads the boat tour. Did you find any words with prefixes? Well, hopefully all of you should have found the first prefix word, which is the word uneaten. And it has the prefix un in it. Un, if you remember from Monday's lesson, means not. So uneaten literally means not eaten. So the fried dumpling that Ernesto had in his cabin was not eaten. It was still to be eaten. The other prefix that is in this passage, hopefully you found it, is the word disappeared. And this has the prefix dis in it, which is a new prefix you might have known from your own reading, but we're going to learn it in slightly more detail today. Bonus challenge. There is one more prefix in this passage from this bit, the dolphin, until the next bit, which is until the end of this sentence, lost. There's one more prefix that we haven't learnt yet, and we're not going to be learning specifically in year 3, but if you can find it, I would love to feature your work in the next shout out video. So can you spot there's one more word with a prefix, a different one that we don't already know and we're not going to learn today? Have a think. Look forward to seeing your challenge answers. So let's go to the whiteboard. So what I just did is I appeared at the whiteboard. Here's the whiteboard, and I'm going to write up the word appear in big letters so we can all take a look. Now have a think in your head. Is this word a prefix or a root word? And do we know the difference between a prefix and a root word? Have a think in your head, and if you would like, write it down on your piece of paper as well. Prefix or root word? Now, if you thought it was a prefix, hold on a second because I'm going to explain why you're mistaken. This is actually a root word, okay? And the prefix is the bit at the beginning. Remember that pre means before, so the bit that comes before the root word has to be the prefix. And we just looked at an example in Evie in the Jungle of a word that has the root appear but is actually a prefix word, and that word is disappear. So dis here is the prefix. I have a question for you. Is a prefix a type of word or not? Yes or no? Have a think. Is this prefix here, dis, is that a word? The answer is no. It looks like a word, but it's not used on its own. It's always used attached to another word. So a prefix is just a group of letters that carries meaning, but it isn't a word on its own. The meaning of this prefix, dis, is, I'll write it in purple so it matches, not or opposite of. So when you add the prefix dis to a word, you need to add the meaning not or opposite of to the root word. So if I were to represent how this prefix changes the word as an equation, so I can actually use my math symbols to help me, I could write dis, which is not or opposite of, plus appear, which is the root word. How can I mush those meanings together to make it make more sense? Because I can't say this word means not opposite of plus appear. I could say it means opposite of appear. Which is exactly what it does mean. Now the reason I chose opposite of appear is because it makes a little bit more sense. Not appear doesn't exactly make sense to me. But if we think about it, I appeared into this video and now I'm going to disappear. Now that we've reminded ourselves what a prefix is and what a root word is, we're going to go through a few more prefixes that we need to learn before the end of the week. Please remember as you're watching the video to note down the meanings of each prefix. In your last prefix task, a lot of people muddled up the meanings of the prefixes, or they forgot that prefixes have special meanings that aren't exactly how they're written. So the meaning of dis when it's a prefix is not dis. Dis is the prefix and the meaning is not or opposite of. And you're going to need that knowledge in order to decode the words that are going to be in your task later. So let's take a look at the word disinterested. When we're decoding words with prefixes, the first thing we need to do is separate the root from the prefix. So I know dis is a prefix. That means interested must be the root. Then I do my little equation. So dis means not or opposite of interested. And that equals not interested, which is exactly what disinterested means. So this is another method that you can use in order to solve the meanings of words with prefixes. You can actually write out an equation and show the overall meaning once you put it all together. So that is dis, not or opposite of. You will notice that dis is very similar to another prefix we already know, which is called un. The next prefix is mis. Mis carries the meaning wrong. So whenever it's attached to the word, you need to attach the meaning wrong to whatever the meaning of the root word is. Let's take a look at how this would form an equation with mis understood. So in this case, I've added the wrong from the prefix mix, so that's my meaning from the prefix, plus understood, which is the root. But wrong understood doesn't quite make sense, so to make it make more grammatical sense, I've changed it to the meaning wrongly understood. So if you have misunderstood something, you have wrongly understood it. Maybe if you don't understand prefixes, you might have misunderstood them. That's how we use the prefix mis. The next prefix is in, and you'll notice it has a very similar meaning to dis and a very similar meaning to un. It just means not. Another prefix that adds the meaning not to the word it attaches to. Let's have a look at these two words with the prefix in. We need to first separate out the prefix from the root word. In active, in correct. Then we need to make our equations using the meaning of the prefix, making sure we translate this prefix into its meaning. So let's have a look at what these two equations would look like. So now we have, for the word inactive, I've done the equation. I've done my not from the prefix in plus active from the root, which equals the meaning not active when you put the two parts together. Here, I've done very similar. Not from the in plus correct from the root word makes the meaning not correct. And this is the last prefix, a very interesting one. This prefix is sub, and sub carries the meaning under or below. Now I'm hoping all of you should have seen this word before. Submarine. Have a think in your head. Do you know what a submarine is? Have you ever seen a picture of one? If you haven't, don't worry. We can work out what it is by using our prefix and our root decoding. So we've got the prefix sub and the root marine. What kind of an equation or what kind of meanings are we going to need to put together? Let's have a look. So you can see that I've divided up my prefix and my root and I've put down the related meanings. So sub has something to do with under, so I've put under plus marine. I need to do one extra step here because I'm not exactly sure what marine means. Well, I looked it up in a dictionary and it turns out anything that's marine has something to do with the sea. So when I did my equals and translated the meaning, I actually ended up putting under plus the sea. So if there's a root word that you don't know, you can always look up the root word in order to find out a part of what the whole word will mean. Now I've got under the sea, all I need to do is to put it all together into one meaning, which is under the sea. If you have ever seen a submarine before, then you will know that a submarine is a type of ship that goes underneath the sea. So by using our skills of understanding prefixes, separating words into roots and prefixes, and then adding together all the different meaning parts of the word, we can find out what a whole new word means. So that's the end of the prefixes we need to learn for today. And you need to add all this knowledge of the prefixes from today to all the knowledge you have from Monday of those other prefixes. A way to do that would be to memorise the meanings of each of these prefixes, and I recommend, in order to do that, that you take a moment to pause this video and write them down. You'll notice, I've forgotten a few. You'll notice that at the end of each prefix I've put a little dash, a hyphen. The reason I've put that is to remind you that prefixes are not words. They need to be attached to something, and that's why it's got a little dash there to show that it needs to be attached to something in order to make this meaning. So let's go through the meanings one more time as you write them down. The prefix dis carries the meaning not or opposite of. The prefix miss means wrong. The prefix in means not. And the prefix sub means under or below. So now it's time for the Jade and Indigo task. So only for those of you who are in groups Jade or Indigo and you have been told that by a teacher. You can see the task says, look at the word given and identify the basic prefix and the root. Then give a meaning. So this is quite similar to the work you did the other day. The table is just laid out slightly differently. I'm going to do the first one as an example and then you can complete the rest of them either on a printed worksheet that looks like this, or you can just write out your own columns on a table in your book. So the first word is misread. First thing I need to do is identify the prefix, which I'm going to say is miss, because I know I've seen that prefix miss in today's lesson. That means the leftover part of the word that's not miss must be the root, which I can see says read. So that is the root here, and that should be in red, so you can see it's my answer. So then for the meaning, I need to do my little addition of the two meanings together. So what is the meaning of miss? Well, I know from my notes that miss means wrong. So I do wrong plus the root, which is read. Now wrong read doesn't make that much sense. So just like we did before when we had the prefix miss, I'm actually going to change it to wrongly. So I'm going to say read wrongly, or to read wrong, is what this word means. So all you need to do is carry on filling in the rest of the table and using your notes to remember what each of these prefixes sub, dis, in all mean. Remember to email your work into the Year 3 email address, and also if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing your work. Okay, so if you're still watching, that means that you are not in the Jade or the Indigo group and you're going to be going on to the main task. If you are in the Jade or Indigo group, you're welcome to watch on, but this is a slightly complicated version of prefixes, so don't worry if you find it too difficult. There's just one thing I need to share with those of you in Year 3 who are carrying on with this lesson. There's one prefix in, which is actually a shapeshifter, which means that it can change its form depending on which type of root word it's attached to. So let's recap. So the prefix in carries the meaning not. And I'm going to show you 3 other versions of the same prefix that when it has shapeshifted depending on the word it's in front of. So the first one is im. The prefix in changes to im when it comes before an m or a p. For example, imagine I wanted to add the prefix in to the root word mature. I can't do that. What happens is the prefix automatically shapeshifts and becomes immature. Because the n is before an m, it can't stay that way, it has to change to an m. So you would never see the version immature, you would see immature. But this still originally comes from the prefix in. It's just shapeshifted. Here's another example. The prefix in can also change to the prefix ir, and that only happens before an r. So, for example, if I wanted to say something was not regular, I could use the prefix in, because that means not, and the root word regular. However, you would never see it in this form, because what would happen to the in? It would change to a ir, and this is the form you would see it in, irregular. Once again, this ir does come from the prefix in. It's just a changed form. And you would end up with ir. The last one is the prefix il, which is also another form of in. In changes to il before the letters I or l, I or l in a root word. For example, if I wanted to say that something was not logical, normally you would add the prefix in But we can't have in logical because the in can't stay that way before an L. So instead, it becomes illogical. So the in has changed to a ill. And it still means not logical. It still comes originally from that prefix in. So if you see the form of in that is actually im or ill or ear, just remember that the original prefix is in and the meaning is still not. And that will help you in your task today. So finally, before I set you off to do your task, I'm just going to show you an example of how to actually fill out the worksheet if you have it, or how to draw your table. So the task says, look at the word given and identify the basic prefix and the root. Then give a meaning. So in the first column, you have all the words that have been given to you. Then you have a column for the prefixes. Then you have a column for the roots. And then you have a column for the meaning. As you can see, for the first word, misread, I've already identified the prefix miss, put it in the column with a little dash to show it's a prefix and not a word. Then I've identified the root, which is read, and put it in the root column. I've done a little equation, adding the meaning of miss, which is wrong, if you remember from your prefix list. So adding wrong to the root meaning, which is read. And then I've come out with a meaning when it's all been added together, which isn't just wrong read, I've actually made it make sense, which is to read wrongly. I'm going to do the next example with you also, you can see how to do it. So impossible, which prefix is it? Now if I weren't thinking, I might put im, but now I remember that im isn't actually the prefix, the original prefix. The original prefix is in, it's just shape-shifted to im. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put im, and then I'm going to put in brackets in, because that's actually the prefix it comes from. Once I've seen im, I can see that the rest of the root is possible. Now I'm going to do my addition. So what is the meaning of in? Well, I remember it's not, and the meaning of the root word is possible. So when I add it all together, I should have the meaning not possible. So carry on with each of these. Try to remember the different forms of in, the shape-shifting prefix, and also the meanings of each individual prefix. Remember to put the meaning down and not just the name of the prefix, which is in or miss or dis. Actually put the meaning down. And then email in your work so I can have a look and see how you're doing. Good luck to all of you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Bye. Pause the video now to complete your task. Before I explain your... Oops.